Do we have a quorum? Yeah, we do. I'd like to call the regular meeting of Cobre Board of Education into session. It is 5 o'clock. Please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, a symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures. Please let the minutes show that Mr. Cordova, Mr. Guadiana, Mr. Holguin, myself, and Frank Gomez, are you there? Did anybody hear Frank?
No, sir. I don't see him.
Okay. Please let the minutes show that Mr. Gomez is not on yet. Entertain a motion for approval of agenda items.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Holguin, second by Mr. Cordova. Any additions? Call for the vote. Mr. Holguin,
Yes.
Mr. Guadiana, Mr. Guadiana,
Sorry, I was muted.
no vote.
Yes.
Mr. Cordova?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Guadiana, yes. Mr. Cordova?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Motion passes. Entertain a motion for approval of the minutes of June the 8th. Mr. Cordova made the motion, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Guadiana. Any corrections to the minutes? Call for the vote. Mr. Holguin,
Mr. Sepulveda, I had a question on the minutes, page 4. Before we vote, I'm sorry. I was a little confused when I read through the report on the security cameras for the ball fields.
yes.
And it may just be a typo or something, but it says that the cameras are in rotating form and record 24/7, but do not record or have audio. I didn't quite understand what that meant.
Victor, are you online? Victor?
Yes, I'm online.
Victor. Could you answer that question, please?
It was a typo on my behalf. I made a mistake, but the correct minutes that are going to be signed are corrected.
Can you elaborate a little bit more? What's it?
Was it for June the 8th?
Yes, Rini. It was. It said that they record 24/7, but then it said they don't record or have audio. So I wasn't sure.
It was a typo. It should not have said record. It should have only said that there is no voice.
It doesn't record the audio. It records the video, but not the audio.
Yes.
Okay. I understand.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I have
Sorry
a
about
question.
that.
I have a question now. When you said page 4?
Let me see. Yeah, it was page,
It should
no,
have
it
been
was,
page 3.
it was actually page 1 on the July 6th.
On the
Oh,
July
yeah,
6th?
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Page
yeah.
1.
Okay. But Irene, you mean we don't get the minute? You've prepared another set of minutes and we're not looking at them?
Yes, you have, in the board packet, you have 2 minutes. You have the minutes for June the 8th, and you also have the minutes for July the 6th.
Okay, but you just mentioned that you had prepared the final board minutes and that change was reflected in that.
Yes, because when I proofread the minutes, I saw that mistake and I corrected it. But the board packets had already gone out.
Then,
So I can get you a copy of the corrected minutes.
well, just for future reference, that happens, I understand, but you should have let us know up front instead of us approving minutes that you would have changed and then put into official minutes.
Okay.
So we're voting right now on the June minutes.
June the 8th.
Okay.
Entertain a motion.
It's already been moved and seconded.
So
Okay,
I think
take a roll call
we're,
vote.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Take a
No,
roll call
go ahead.
vote.
Yes, this is Gabe Olguin.
Go ahead. Gabe.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Guadiana,
Yes.
Cordova. Cordova. I think he froze up on us.
Mr. Cordova, we need your vote.
Myself, yes.
Yes.
Okay. Myself, yes, with the corrections.
Correction is-
Motion passes. Entertain a motion for approval of the minutes of July 6th.
So moved.
I'll second. But Mr. Sepulveda, you put in a correction for the June minutes and the actual correction is for the July minutes.
The minute that you're seeing there that has the correction on it is for June 8th.
Is it?
Is that right, Irene?
Oh.
It's for July the 6th.
July the 6th is the correction.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's what I see is July 6th.
Okay. Then disregard my comment on the other one. Any corrections for the one on July 6th? And that's that one.
On first page, in the last paragraph, the second bullet, we talk about what we voted on as far as the reopening of schools. And we did not say that we were going to begin the hybrid on September 8th, but that we were going to reevaluate the circumstances to see if September 8th would be a safe time to reopen the schools as far as the hybrid situation.
Mr.
I
Guadiana.
believe that somewhere
can
we
you hear
said,
me?
I believe that somewhere we said that it was pending what would happen with the governor.
Exactly. And the minutes show that we are, and I've had this discussion with Mr. Mendoza, and this is the way it's written in the minutes, it's definitive that we're going to be opening the hybrid session September 8th. And it's not definitive. It's exactly what you said. It's going to be depending on the circumstances.
So Mr. Sepulveda with Mr. Guardiana is correct on that. Why don't you, Mr. Guardiana, if you want, I'm not telling you how to motion it, but you can say that correction that you're willing to get the motion going, but to correct that reading there on the simple date that saying that, well, we have a presentation tonight on the latest. Okay?
Okay. I would suggest the correction of the board will reevaluate the beginning, reevaluate its readiness based on the governor's criteria and medical conditions in the county for beginning the hybrid session on September 8th.
That's correct, Mr. Guardiana.
Is that a motion, Mr. Guadiana?
That's what I would recommend as changes, but, and along that line, I had one more change, and that was the elementary on the page 2, the second to last paragraph, the elementary 2020-21 handbook. We approved it with some changes. There were going to be one of the changes that I recall had to deal with not requiring a state birth certificate, just requiring a birth certificate. And I believe there was another change as well.
Attendance was the other issue.
Okay.
Okay, and then I can assure you that those have been addressed because.
But the way the minutes are written, it doesn't say with
Oh, okay.
changes.
Did you pick up, Irene, that you have to correct that? Okay.
Any other corrections?
One last one. Items for the next agenda. Again, I brought up the suggestion for having the superintendent's evaluation. And I would like that noted on the notes, and we can discuss that at a later time in this meeting.
Okay. Any other corrections? Call for the vote. Mr. Holguín,
Yes.
Mr. Guadiana,
Yes.
Cordova,
Yes.
myself, yes.
Let's go.
Motion carries.
Victoria, I'm present as well.
Oh, okay, Frank. I'm sorry. Didn't see you there.
Yeah, no one would let me in, so I'm using the phone number with the YouTube.
Okay. Your vote?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Okay, Jose.
That moves us to update on unfinished business.
Mr. Superintendent, members of the
Item A.
board, I'd like to yield to Joyce Barrela and Jose Carrillo for an update on the preparation of the school.
Mr. President, board members, Mr. Mendoza. So we did give you a copy in your packets of our school reentry plan. And the most current version of the plan, which is July 23rd, does include the current guidelines that were given down to us by the governor last week. And that states that we will be starting remote learning for all grades, pre-K through 12th grade, on August the 3rd. That was what we had presented the last meeting. What has changed is the hybrid model. We had talked about beginning the hybrid model in September 8th, pre-K through 12th grade, but the governor has stated that we will begin on September 8th for pre-K through grade 5 only. And at that time, the middle school and the high school will remain on remote learning until further guidance is given to us. And that's all going to be contingent on where we are as a state with COVID-19. At that point, it will be reassessed before the September 8th date, and she will provide us with additional guidance if anything changes. As far as the Chromebooks are concerned, As you all know, we did order Chromebooks for all students back in the spring. Unfortunately, we're still on a delay with that. We did speak to the company who we had put the order in with, and he gave us a little bit of good news. We're still on hold, but there's a big shipment coming from HP that's going to be coming into the country. And because our order was put in so early, we should be one of the first districts to get our order filled for 800 of the Chromebooks. We'll still be on a little bit of a delay for 200 of the Chromebooks because we did order 200 of them for pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade that would be touch, because we felt that would be more beneficial to them. And those, we don't have a delivery date for those yet. We're still looking at the middle of August for those. So with the 800, he said the shipment should be coming in any day. So we're hoping that we can be able to get those by the beginning or sometime next week.
I have a question. Is the governor going to be dictating when the school starts, or are they going to leave it to the discretion of the boards?
At this time, Mr. Guadiana, the governor has given us direction on start dates. And so she will be giving us further direction at a later time for the start date for the middle school and the high school.
So the start date for September 8th for the earlier grades is a mandate.
Yes, yes, sir. That's the date that the governor has given us for starting with pre-K through grade 5. Yes. Right.
And
But like I said, Mr. Guadiana, she will be reassessing. She's, working with the Department of Health, the CDC. They will be reassessing prior to that date. I know that right now the numbers in New Mexico have been pretty high. And so depending on where we are at the time, that guidance may stand or it may change.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Joyce.
Okay, thank you.
Moves us to item B, student transportation.
Okay, under student transportation, Mr. President, members of the board, George Peru, are you online, please? And if you can come on and give us an update, please.
Yes, sir. One of the things that we'll be doing, I know that we're very concerned on how we're going to transport and how we're going to do that. I'm visiting with the bus contractors, and we've been spending time with Tina trying to see how we're going to do it the easiest. One of the things that we're looking at is, when we first load the kids, we'll load the first kids that come on, they will have to go immediately all the way to the back, and then we'll load them in a zigzag fashion. One of the things that we'll do also is if there's siblings that are on the bus, they can sit together, and then we'll start zigzagging right after that. The only issue that we have right now is I think we'll be able to transport all the kids the way they are, especially if we go with the hybrid model, and then we also do the abbreviated schedule. The only issue we're going to have is with the kids from Mimbres, the ones that go all the way up into Lake Roberts, because there's a total of like 62 kids up in that area. So we'll have to, hopefully, if we can divide them out, we'll be able to bring them all down in a pretty safe manner. And that's the reason that we're going to be doing them and loading them in a zigzag manner. Do y'all understand what I mean by the zigzag?
Yeah.
Okay. And so do we have any other questions on how we're going to load them and how we're going to transport them in?
My question, Mr. Peru, is if there is one kid that's going to get on the bus, I assume that you're going to be checking temperatures as they come on. If there is one kid that has a temperature when he gets on the bus, my understanding is that one of the other persons that's on the bus is going to have to stay there with him. Okay, that's fine. But then you go down the road and you find another kid that's got a temperature. What are we going to do then?
That's something that we're still working on. Tina and I visited the other day about that because, we can only have, she only has enough personnel to handle like the bus driver and an aide possibly on those buses. You know, so I mean, if we have more than one, we're really going to be in a situation that we're not ready for, you know, because that's the way I know that she doesn't have enough personnel to handle all that. So that's something that we're going to have to work through. So what we're hoping is, you know, we've been putting things out and we've had some parents ask questions also, you know, and when I visited with some of these parents, I tell them, you know, if your child gets up and not feeling well, or if they do have a fever, or if they do have a temperature, please keep them home, you know, because all it's going to do is create other issues for all of us at the bus stop, and not just the bus stop, but also at the school, you know, because we're also going to be doing temperature checks when they get to the schools.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I'm just hoping the parents work with us on those situations so that we can transport everyone safely, you know, that way we don't put anybody else in jeopardy.
Mr. Peru, this
Okay.
is Gabe.
Yes.
So I got sort of a similar question, you know, Toy alluded to it, but on page 24 under transportation of this school reentry plan, it says that page 24, 25, it says that we'll follow all symptom and screening protocols, and it says that parents must wait at the bus stop in case the child exhibits symptoms or has an elevated temperature. So who exactly is checking the temperature? Are we going to have thermometers and check as they get on the bus? Are we doing temperature checks?
Well, there's two things that we're looking at, because one of the things is it's going to depend on personnel and how we set everything up. And Tina and I have visited quite a few times on that, because, you know, we don't know if we're going to have the personnel to be able to do that, because we're going to temperature check them at the schools. But, you know, that our concern was if they come with the fever already and they're on the bus, it just put everybody else in jeopardy. So that's one of the things we're working towards and we're looking at. I was going to sit down and visit with Joyce a little bit also about thermometers and everything, so we could have plenty on all our buses, because we have quite a few buses that'll be running.
I think that's something that we're gonna have to do, George, is try to get those thermometers and have one at least in every bus.
Yes.
George, if I may interrupt, Mr. Sepulveda, the bus contractors already, we've provided them with enough, and you saw the other day a sample of what we had ordered, that the bus contractors now have the temperature guns, that I call them, on how they can read it as they come on board.
So
Yes.
Mr. Mendoza, is that the protocol then? Are the bus drivers going to be taking temperatures?
No, it'll be a
Student?
secondary
That's
person.
not decided yet. I'm sorry, George, go ahead.
We're going to have to look at doing a secondary person, because, you know, when the bus drivers get on, you know, due to their CDL license and stuff, once they get in that driver's seat, they have to stay in that driver's seat. You know, they will not be able to exit the bus with other kids on the bus already. So we have to look at a second person to be on there, like an aide or somebody, to be able to do those thermometer checks, because once the bus driver's on that driver's seat with kids in there, they can't come out of that seat.
Well, it was my understanding, George, that we normally have aides in every bus.
We hadn't in the past. So that's one of the things that we're looking at, and see if she has the personnel to be able to cover it. The only buses that had had aides with them were our special ed buses. You know, or if we had a special circumstance, if we had a kid that we had to bring in, like the Mimbres bus had an aide on it, because we had some special needs students on there.
Mr.
Okay.
Mr. Peru, Mr. Sepulveda, this is something that I would recommend that we figure out before we put any kids on the bus. You know, I think we need to have this process outlined, completely solidified before we move forward with that.
Yes, and that's why I said we've been visiting constantly, Tina and I, because of everything that's coming down. We just want to make sure that we cover everything through the CDC also, and get those things covered for the safety of our kids and our staff.
Mr. Holguin, this is Mr. Mendoza.
I agree with you, Gabe.
Gabe, we are looking at it in terms of personnel needs, and it's been addressed, and now it's just a matter of assigning our educational assistants to ride the bus. So that's the plans in action, okay? We will do it. But one thing, George, we need to allude to and bring the board up to date, because I know Mr. Guardiana has been asking about the startup of school. If we can look ahead, say the third week in August, there's a possibility that we're going to have to bring some of our special needs kids for services and everything else to the buildings. And that's when I anticipate we'll have to be running some buses on the tower. Can you elaborate on that, George, please?
Well, that's one of the things that I'm concerned about also, is because one of the fact that I just got an email today on that we're going to be cutting some of our transportation budget. And so I put a call into Consuelo, the lady that works with us, because one of the things is if they do cut our funding, you know, that was what I was looking at, is that if we continue with the same funding, that we'd be able to run those other buses at different times for the special needs kids. But if they cut our funding, and if they cut it a little bit too much, we're going to struggle on being able to make the transportation budget.
Yeah, that's correct. That's some bad news there, George, but that is correct.
So that's what we're looking at, because one of the things is in talking with Tina is providing the aides that we have, you know, bringing our aides in a little early so that they can ride the bus, and then they can, when they get dropped off at the school with the students, the aides will get dropped off with the students also. We're hoping that we can provide the aides through our EAs that we have on staff right now. But we're trying to work on a plan, Gabe, so that we can be able to get those things taken care of.
And I have a question that kind of spins off of the very same scenario.
Yes, sir.
You go to a bus stop, you pick up some kids, and one of them shows up, one of them tests with a fever. What about the other kids that were at that bus stop? They're in contact.
I didn't hear you, sir.
You go to a bus stop. The bus comes up to a bus stop. They come out. They test the child, and the child has.
It's called contract.
You know, one of the things that we're going to have to do, Mr. Guayana, is also educate them on social distancing when they get there to the bus stop. Also, you know, because they will have to be social distant also themselves until we do the temperature check, and then be able to bring them on board.
So how is it that if the kids are there, and I don't know, that's just a big risk to me. It seems like educating them on social distancing is certainly a prudent thing to do, but assuring it is a whole different story.
Yes, and what's hard is that we want, you know, until we get to the bus stop, we won't be able to assure that they do that, though. And I understand where you're coming from, but I don't know how we're going to address it to be able to do that, you know, especially if there's not any parents there also to help us with that situation.
Especially then.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Peru, Mr. Guadiana, what about having like a requirement, a policy that says that the parents have to remain with the kids until the time they get on the bus? Can we do something like that?
I don't know if we can put that in a policy, because, you know, especially I just think about like the parents at work that, you know, because a lot of those kids are going to walk themselves to the bus stop. You know, like in the past, a lot of the kids would just walk themselves to the bus stop, even if they were, you know, kindergartners, first grade, you know, because the pre-Ks are the only ones that we pick up that are a lot closer to their homes. But the way the bus stops are set up, I mean, they would walk themselves to the bus stop, and the parents were never there.
So we're aware that the situation may be that there will be no adult supervision, and the likelihood of social distancing is not going to be properly followed.
Yes, sir.
Their kids.
And I think
So
that's why I think that's why it's so important to not just educate the parents, but also to try and educate some of the kids. You know, I mean, if there's older kids that are there, that, you know, they make it aware that, hey, you know what, we have to keep separated. We have to be 6 feet apart from each other, you know, but I mean, it's no guarantee that they will continue to do that. It's worrisome. It's very worrisome.
Can something like this be covered at the training that's supposed to happen with parents?
And that's where I was thinking that we could talk to the parents about that, especially with, you know, because we do have a lot of kids that they bring them to school, but then there is a big portion of kids that they pick up the bus, you know, because their parents go off to work and things of that nature. But we do have, you know, so I was hoping that when we do visit and do the orientation with the parents, that we make that like it's not a policy, but that we
Why don't you address it?
We have them understand that that's the situation that we have.
We talked about it.
So, Mr. President, members of the board, I just feel compelled to address this. We had those discussions today, and one of the things that we stated was that, you know, when we address the parents and communicate with the parents, we're going to be telling them that due to the COVID-19 emergency, that we are going to be requesting them to please, when they go to the bus stop, that they wait there and wait until the student's temperature is checked. I know that in the past, students walk by themselves, and there's some parents that have work that are having to go to work, but we're going to be asking them if they can please, if they can't make it, to have an adult from the household or somebody to wait there, so that in case that their temperature is high, they will not be able to get on the bus. The other thing that we're looking at is that if there's no parent there, we are looking at having the contractors EA and an additional EA from the district, so that if need be, our contingency plan is that one of the EAs may have to stay there, and then we would follow up to go pick up the EA until they pick up the student. Once they pick up the student, then we would go and pick up the EA. But the thing is that we really want to address with the parents is that this is something that we need support with. We need help. This is something new for everybody, and we need their support in helping us with this situation. And it will be addressed during our communication with the parents.
Thank you. Next one.
Any other
Anything else,
questions?
Mr. Mendoza?
Any other questions?
I did. This is Gabe. I had another question on that document again, page 24. And it says schools will, and then it has a whole list of bulleted items there. One of them is establish a schedule routine for cleaning and disinfecting of highly touched surfaces, and it sort of lists them all off there. I'm just wondering who's going to do this? Whose responsibility is it?
Janitors.
On which part is that, Mr. Holguin?
Page 24. Schools will establish a scheduled routine for cleaning and disinfecting of highly touched surfaces and areas such as door handles, stair rails, faucet handles, toilet handles, playground equipment.
Okay, yes, and we've addressed that also. One of the things that we're looking at is some machines that also sterilize, like the viruses, not just the COVID virus, but also some of the other viruses. So we're looking at trying to see what we can do to be able to get the best price for the best product that we can get. Also, so that we won't have so many chemicals also, because everything else is going to be treated with chemicals. So we're hoping that we are able to get these machines, because they're also with the ultraviolet lights that actually sterilize that. It doesn't, because the way these lights work, it's not like they kill the virus, they sterilize it. So it's actually like killing it, but it sterilizes it so it doesn't continue to spread.
So, Mr. Peru,
They have some
Mr.
portable
Mendoza,
ones for the buses also.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
No
I've
problem.
asked this in the past. You know, I mean, this is a whole new set of duties, and how are we going to address this with our limited janitorial staff? Are we increasing our janitorial staff to deal with this? And it's something that I suggest that we should look into.
I'll let you answer that, Mr. Mendoza.
Yes, I've asked George to go ahead and contact some companies that are out there that we could contract for, let's say, for the year on a monthly basis, George, to be available. And I know we're working on that, not only to help us clean when there is a hotspot, and we need to address it on that. Mr. Holguin, our principals discussed that heavily today when when we reviewed the reentry plan again. And yes, they had a meeting with Hans and Associates and on the cleanings and the proper ways to clean their building, sanitize their building. So they will be meeting with staff and custodials here starting Wednesday. And that's why they have the days dedicated to reviewing their plans. And what we have a schedule where George and I and Jose and Joyce will be at the buildings to participate in listening to their plans and so forth. So we're taking this real serious. And also the George working with Montoya Transportation, they've got their plan on sanitizing the buses daily and in between routes.
Yes.
I know that. So that was brought up, and it was very, very impressive on that. So this is uncharted waters, like I tell you, but we're trying our best to get it going and see what we got. And Joyce has done a good job of ordering our chemical supplies and stuff out of the recommended CDC retailers that they've provided us with. So we're there, and we're learning as we go. Board members.
Yes, all board members, we will keep you abreast of how things are coming together when we're using the chemicals, or if we use the lights or whatever we use, we'll keep you abreast of it. And if you have any questions, feel free to call us at any time, even if, if it's something comes up tomorrow or it comes up during the week, we don't have to wait till the board meetings. If something comes up or you have a question, feel free to call us.
And this will be another agenda item that will occur here possibly almost every time, because we got to talk about this, the updates that are coming down from the governor and so forth in the preparation of opening schools.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mendoza, Mr. Peru. I just had one other thought, in dealing with, just in my job, just we utilize the local fire departments because they've come up with sanitizing method that works extremely well. It uses basically just salt, and an air compressor and a paint gun, and it's pretty effective and pretty efficient way of sanitizing stuff quickly, including vehicles, any kind of surfaces. But if you're interested, George, I could get with you later on that.
Yes, I'd like to see what that is like, because it might be something that it might be easier for us to do with, especially with our buses and even the vehicles that the staff are using.
Yeah, I ordered a couple for the forest, and we're starting to use them to sanitize vehicles and offices and all kinds of stuff. So I can get with you on that.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to say maybe we can get together this week so we can see if we can get a game plan going with everything else we're doing.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, thank you. I'll wait for your call.
Thank you, Gabe.
All right.
Thank you.
One other thing, George.
Yes, sir.
My daughter has ordered a couple of ultraviolet lights also, and those they run anywhere from probably $50 to a couple of $100, but those are also available out there somewhere. I know I can't tell you where she ordered it from, but I know she ordered a couple of them.
Okay. Yeah, and if you can get that information for me also, just so we can try. I've been looking at a lot of different vendors, because they vary in price. Even for the big ones, they vary from, sometimes, like some of the ones I looked at were $1,500 in one spot, and then they were $2,500 in another area. And then it seemed like I found the same exact machine for like $1,000. So, but if you can get that information for me, I'd sure appreciate it.
Yeah, this ones that she ordered were handheld wands, and you can use them. They said on travel, they operate on a rechargeable battery. You can disconnect them through a bus or through a vehicle, or I don't know, maybe even through the bathroom, whatever. I don't know, George. I haven't, but I know that she ordered a couple of them.
Okay, if you can get that information, because I know some of the information I've been reading up on is that some of the ultraviolet lights, especially the ones that sterilize that virus, that it can harm our eyes and stuff like that if they're not used properly. So unless it's a different type of ultraviolet light, but I'd like to see the information to see if it's something that would work for us, so when we're moving everything around and doing the things that we can, maybe it'll help the custodial staff also as they're cleaning.
Yeah, this one said that if the thing is turned up toward your face or turned up, it won't work. It's got to be away from you. when you're swinging it or something like that. But I know
Okay.
that if you turn it towards you, it's not going to work.
Okay. All right, yeah, if you can give me that
I'll
information,
let you
sir, I'd sure
know.
appreciate it. Okay, sounds
Yeah.
good.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Holguin. Thank you, Mr. Sepulveda.
I'd like to chime in a little bit and kind of go back to Gabe's original point about the demand of work that's going to be now required for maintenance and keeping things clean. It seems like it's going to be, without a doubt, double the work that's being done now, and having the mindset that, oh well, we might get a contractor. I think misses the point that if we try to level a quantity of work that will make maintenance staff or a housekeeping staff feel overwhelmed, can we afford to lose anybody? I would think not. And I would hope you would really take a look at augmenting the staff with the potential of going to further augmenting the staff. When you talk about cleaning the playground equipment, that's going to take a while. And certainly what was mentioned now about the salt spray, that's probably something to be considered. But I'm worried. I'm worried that sitting idle, sitting with the level of staffing now, thinking that this amount of work is going to be done, I think it's a misrepresentation that we're giving the parents.
Listen to this.
We're going to be able, and the burden that we're placing on the principals.
Correct. Yes, I understand, Mr. Why not? And hopefully we can now, maybe with all of us brainstorming and the information that we can share with each other, it'll help us all, because I do feel that, our custodians are going to be very, very overwhelmed with some of the stuff that they're going to have to be doing. I know the maintenance has been real careful about going in, they spray some of the stuff before they even touch it, on some of the items. So we've been doing that, especially like when they go in and work in one of the cafeterias or of that nature that they're looking at. I know that they carry the Lysol and we carry the disinfectant, and they spray some of the stuff before they even touch it.
Okay, thank you.
Before the kids go
Anything
in.
else?
The kids are sitting there.
Mr. Mendoza? Anything?
Oh, nothing else. Public input is next.
Okay. At this time, we'll entertain anything from the public in reference to our agenda. Did we have anything, Victor?
Really, Cobre Indian.
Victor?
Yes, Mrs. Sepulveda, we've had a couple of comments come through on the YouTube channel. I know you guys have answered quite a bit of that already, as far as following the governor's orders on how we are to return to school. That's been mentioned numerous times. Another one was pertaining to online enrollment, and I sent the information on how they can go about that.
Okay, and that was it?
Can you repeat that, sir?
Was that it?
That's it for now. Yes, sir.
Okay. Moves us to administration.
Yes, sir. Item A is our approval of our 2021 Athletic Activity Policy Handbook. And I'd like to recognize Nelson Diaz, our athletic director, Sandra Montoya, our principal at the high school, and Maureen Peru, associate principal. I would like for them to come on and comment on the handbook, and then the board can ask questions.
Members of the board,
Nelson?
how are you guys this evening? Hope everybody's doing okay. So we're talking about the athletic handbook first. So there were some changes, nothing major, no major changes were made to the policy handbook. I think you guys had a chance to look at it. So the biggest thing that we did change, or that we did add, was as far as the definitions, and I wish this was numbered, so we need to number these, but we added the definition of possession. We came across some issues last year that this was really important, so we added that definition in there. We changed some things on the discipline of athletics. If I need to slow down, just let me know. So we're looking at the discipline of athletics. Right above it, we included vape products. Mechanisms included but not limited to pen, oil, substances, cartridges, etc. as a controlled substance. We've also added on the first offense on discipline of athletics states removal of 100% of athletic competition season, including district state tournaments. If the remainder of the season tournament does not meet 90 days, then the remainder of the suspension period will be served in the next athletic season in which students choose to participate. The biggest change in that one is that we are going to include Monday through Saturday to count these days. School breaks will count if the sport is in season and practicing during the break. So we were only including Monday through Thursday before, and now we're going to include Monday through Saturday on that one.
What was the
Any questions on that one so
reason
far?
for that, Mr. Diaz?
Because the extension, because then the days, the actual months that the kids were going to be out was very, very much extended. So, so if we were looking at possibly 90 days, 90 days could be considered half a semester. But because we don't go every day, those 90 days would go into the following semester. So it would extend, even though it's still just 90 days, the weeks would extend much further.
Okay.
But
And we-
including Saturday, then you're actually making them less. Why not just Monday through Friday?
Because we do have games and we do have practices on Saturdays.
But your argument about the 90 days, that would take in that Saturday would weaken the 90 days, so it would be less than one semester.
As far as the 90 days are concerned.
Yeah.
I mean,
That was
this
your
is
argument
intended, I
for
mean, we
adding
are, I mean, the intention is to prevent kids from doing this, but it's also not meant to take away their entire athletic season either. So we're trying to find a happy medium. Because, I mean, kids make mistakes and we understand that. And we're in the business of helping kids. So if we can still hold them to those 90 days, including games that are on Saturdays and practices that are on Saturdays, I think would be appropriate.
Wow, you'd be drunk in the middle.
Okay.
So this is Gabe. I would sort of agree with Mr. Guadiana. You know, I would be interested to know what the schools that are going a regular schedule Monday through Friday, do they include Saturday because there's games on Saturdays as well?
I don't know. I mean, I would look into that. I mean, we can revisit this. I know that was a point of contention a lot last year, so that's kind of why we decided to look into it and make some adjustments. But we could look into that further, and you know, we can bring that back if that's something the board wants us to do. I mean, we don't have a problem doing that. I don't have a problem looking at that and then coming up with a Monday through Friday solution, or just keeping it Monday through Thursday.
See, and playing the devil's advocate, the extended numbers of days would have, like, reducing the 90-day requirement to a certain effect would also be trying to get somebody back into the roster and improve chances of winning. And where the punitive aspect of this is so that to understand that succeeding in academics is first and foremost.
Correct. And I agree. We do agree that succeeding in academics is first and foremost. But like I said, 45, if we reduced it to 45 days, they wouldn't be able to come back to any specific season anyway. That whole season for them would be completely done at that point. Very rare that they'd be able to come back in the same season. The 90 days for sure, they wouldn't be able to come back and if they don't do what we're asking them to do, which is take an educational course, possibly do random drug tests or have a drug test provided by the parents. Those things haven't changed, but sorry about that. But yes, so they would not be able to come back within that one sport itself. It would go on to the next sport. And if those 45 days weren't finished or those 90 days weren't finished within that sport, then those days carry on to the next sport.
Again, it seems like the roster takes a precedent over academics.
And Mr. Guadiana, what we're trying to do is we want to educate the students of what they did and why it was so wrong. That's why we're making that educational class mandatory for the student athletes. And like Mr. Diaz said, the likelihood of them coming back within that sports season is very rare just because the number of days they're out. So even if they do go to that mandatory class, it's still 45 days that they're going to be missing.
Okay.
The only thing that I don't want to see is kind of happened to what was happening last year. They were suspended from games, but yet they were going to practice, and that should not be the thing to happen.
Yes. So in those situations, we kind of left it up to individual coaches. Now, the reasoning or the thinking behind it was to keep kids out of trouble. And we felt like it would be much harder to have somebody keep coming to practice and not play and stay motivated. And that way we were able to keep, as coaches, were able to keep track of the student and they weren't out doing other things. I mean, that's also another thing that we can look at changing in the policy. If that's what the board would like for us to do, we can look at that and change that and make it a policy that says if you're out for those 90 days, no practices whatsoever. But so that was the rationale behind that.
I take strong exception to that rationale. Number one, it sets up a scenario where it's discretionary by the coach, which means some people may have it, some people may not. One sport may have it, one sport may not. And people are going to be coming back to the board and saying, how come my son or my daughter was affected this way and so-and-so's was not? And I think the entire purpose of having a policy is to avoid that, to be uniform in what we say. And I absolutely agree with Mr. Sepulveda that if you have somebody on suspension and you're saying you're letting them go back to practice, that kind of defeats the purpose. And if that person got in that behavior while he was going to practice anyway, it doesn't seem like going to practice is going to have that supervision effect that you're saying it will have.
Well, that's something that we can definitely add. So I will make a note to that and just include that as no practices during that time.
So this is Gabe. I would actually disagree with that. I think that them going to practice and not being allowed to participate in games is punishment enough. Excuse me, but I think there's somebody that's on the phone line that continues to make interesting remarks after people are talking. If you could mute your phone so that we don't hear your remarks, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, it's a phone number ending in 27.
Or Victor, can you mute him?
So I was saying, I disagree with that. I think that they should continue to go to practice. I think it keeps them engaged. It keeps them motivated. It keeps them out of trouble, which is important, I think, because if not, they're going to, whatever behavior that they engaged in that got them in trouble, I think they're just going to engage in that more if they don't go to practice. So I agree with that, but I don't agree with them, suiting out at the games or at the events or even being taken as managers or, being allowed to participate in the actual event in any way. I don't agree with that piece, but I think keeping them engaged in practice is important.
I don't think they're allowed to participate in any games or dress out or even travel when they're suspended.
They're not.
I think I've seen that, though. I could be mistaken, but I think I've seen, that happen in several different sports.
We will outline that clearly. I mean, we can make sure that that's outlined in there very clearly.
And however it is.
I agree with. I also agree with Gabe that maybe it's all right for them to go to practice, but not suit out with them, not travel with them, not sit on the bench when they got a home game. None of that stuff.
Well, and I still disagree with that, but nevertheless, what I do think is imperative is that it be universal. It will not be discretionary for somebody to allow one person to do that and not another. That the rules should be universal, with no exception.
I would agree with that it should be a school-wide policy and activity-wide policy and consistent.
I think the reason for the autonomy was because a lot of coaches do have their own guidelines. They have their own contracts that they try to use with their own sports, but we can make sure that that is universal.
This is Frank Cordova. I agree with Gabe, and I also agree to the fact that it should be universal for everybody. What's good for one sport should be good for the other, and I agree with that totally.
Yes, sir. We will make that correction and the addition to the policy.
Thank you. Continue.
Right. So we did add that into during the suspension, students may participate in practice on a restricted basis at the coach's discretion, which you guys have felt like that shouldn't be at the coach's discretion. So we will make that adjustment, and that's a few pages down from where we're at, athletic activity and post-suspension. And it should be highlighted. Most of the other changes that we've made were highlighted or in red.
I had one other concern on the policy, and
yes,
it I guess absent the page number, it starts on the third page anyway, and it has to deal with parent and guardian responsibilities, and the whole section that is given to us in red. I disagree with this. We're telling the parent how to interact with their child on, for instance, number 2, don't soften the blow for your child after a loss. If they happen to lose, teach them not to make excuses. Teach them to learn from their loss and move on. We better get, we better get through some setbacks if we face our challenges head on. And then it goes, teach them, it basically is telling parents how to raise their children.
These are guidelines from the Nmaa and their suggestions. Go ahead, Sandra. I know you were reading into that.
Oh, go ahead. You were saying what I was going to say.
Yeah, so these are guidelines and suggestions from the Nmaa. So this comes directly from the New Mexico Activities Association, and these are their suggestions on how to help your child as a parent.
You know, it's
We
not
don't
that
have to include these. We can delete them if you would like.
I would like for you to attach them as recommended, as they are recommended. Say these are recommendations from that association, and just add that as an addendum. Because this will give the guidance. It's just so long as it's a policy, that means we're requiring that of them. And I don't think we're at that point.
So just give them the link and they can go to it?
No, print it out and put recommended or suggest for your consideration as suggested by that particular association.
Okay, just as an aside.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it's good information, and some people will benefit from it. But as a policy, I'd hate to see it a policy, because we can be in at the games and watching people cheer for our team and boo the other team, and they're violating the policy.
Okay.
Mr. Diaz.
I mean, if that's what we
Posting the
want.
link would be simplest.
What's that?
Mr. Diaz, that's Frank Gomez. I personally think that what's placed there from the NMAA, or like you said, there are guidelines, and I think it needs to be there, and possibly not saying that it's part of the policy, but it is advice to our players and giving them structure on winning or losing. And I think it is important that we have some type of guidelines and showing them. We're not directing our parents to follow those guidelines and this is what they need to do, but it's just tools for the parents and resources to assist our players.
Okay,
Exactly.
we can provide it as a resource. I mean, is that the consensus from the board? And we can do that.
I got a question, Mr. Diaz. Right
Yes,
there
sir.
at the beginning of the red, you could just say that the guidelines of NMAA are as follows. And you could just, and not even have to do anything else, just put their guidelines by MMA.
I mean, it does say New Mexico Activities Association parental guidance for student participation. I'm not sure how you guys want me to proceed.
I would like to see it as an addendum to the policy and not even bear any kind of likelihood that it is part of our policy. I think that would be confusing. But I think it is very good information to put out. But I would like to see it outside of the text so we can differentiate what is policy and what is not.
I would agree with that. I think maybe just as an attachment or appendix, just some.
And we
Or a link
and
or
we can
something.
move it to the back with the links, the other NMAA links that we have in the back.
Yeah, make reference to it in the text. That's fine. And then put it in the back. I think that would be a very good idea.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good. So I know this is a big document, so I kind of want to move through it real little quickly here. Nothing else has really been changed. Let's see. The one thing that we have added a little bit to was participating in multiple activities or athletics. And it reads, participating in multi-athletic activities, Cobre Consolidated School was added students to participate in multiple sports activities, even when these sports or activities occur concurrently with administrative approval. So we got to be able to, so that with administrative approval has also been added. Everything else has stayed the same since previous years.
Where is that, Nelson? I didn't see that.
That would be participating in multi-athletic activities. And the other thing that we will do is we'll number these pages for us. So
about
participating
what
in it would be at the very top of a page, and I'm sorry it's not numbered there.
It should be around page 26. Somewhere around there.
Is it after the social media stuff?
Let me see here. It's going to be after on a restricted basis at the coach's discretion, athletic activity and post suspensions. It's going to be 2 pages after that, after the cutting policy.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions on that one? The other thing that we did.
The only thing on that one is,
Go ahead.
the only thing on that one is that we need to make sure that with the size of our I know that there's still some coaches that say you either play for me and nobody else, or for example, you play in the band and you're not going to be able to play in football, basketball, baseball, whatever, and that's it. We need to make sure people understand that we are a small school and those kids sometimes have to play or like to play 2 sports, but they have to make a choice.
Yes, that is very correct, and we emphasize that very strongly. And so we do realize that there are kids that do multiple things, and we want to encourage them to do as much as possible. But we also don't want to overwhelm them as well. So we do consider that. The coaches do understand that. We've been really forthcoming in telling our coaches that this is the policy and that we need to work with each other.
Thank you.
I would agree with you, Toy.
Members of the board, if I could please make a comment. One thing,
Go ahead.
thank you very much. With COVID coming in, of course, we're going to have a lot of concurrent seasons going on at the same time. As you mentioned, we do have a restricted number of athletes, and they are going to have to be involved in multiple sports at given times. Of course, obviously, that time frame can also change just with the continuation of this pandemic. But as of right now, if you look at the schedule of events, state events, and even start dates of sports, there's a few that will overlap. At least the practice seasons will overlap. So you're gonna see kids even in a couple of sports, maybe even in 3 sports possibly. So I think there's got to be some guidance with the coaches and set some establish some guidelines to make sure that they're going to have to really be working on practice times, not penalizing, just being able to work with one. You're going to see more than ever that the coaches and sponsors are going to really have to be working together in order to pull this off in the spring, when as of right now, we have just 3 sports going on in the fall through the beginning of the winter, and then everything else starts in the spring. So it's going to really be paramount that that some guidelines are established for our kids to be successful.
You're right, Pat. Thank you for that.
Yes, and those coaches are really going to have to coordinate with each other on practice.
If you guys would like, I know it's not on the agenda for tonight, but I would be glad to meet with the board and Mr. Mendoza and kind of give you guys an update on everything athletics concerning COVID at a later date, if you guys would like that.
I would like that, yeah.
Yes.
But I would just, this is Gabe, I would just echo what Mr. Sepulveda said. I think that it's good for the kids in a sense it's a life lesson to deal with competing priorities and how to manage conflict between 2 coaches like that. But I think also it puts a lot of pressure on a kid sometimes when you have one coach that's saying, you really need to be here or you're not going to play, that kind of scenario. And I know that still goes on. And, it's something that we definitely need to emphasize to our coaches.
Yes, sir. I agree.
And for
the other major thing go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mr. Diaz. On that thought, is there anything in the policy now that can kind of address that so that is mandated?
It does. It is in the policy that it does state that students are allowed to be in multiple activities and sports. It does address that.
Okay, so will that translate into coaches accommodating that, or will it police it? So, or
You know, that's been a personnel issue for me. And that's something that I've been working with the coaches these past few years to really work with. And I think we are getting better. I mean, there's room for improvement, but that is an area in which I think we can continue to improve and continue to work together. And the coaches understand at this point that they understand that we are going to have overlapping seasons. They understand that they're going to have to be flexible and work with each other and work with our students to provide the best possible outcome for them.
Okay.
And the addition to the social media policy, that was separate. We thought that it would be a good idea to include it in the athletic handbook, so that was added, and it's not an aside anymore. Nothing was amended or changed to that. We reviewed it and we felt like it was pretty. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Montoya. Did we make any more adjustments to that?
No, the social media policy stayed the same.
And the last major change that we did was on the tardy policy. It's under school attendance. And now keep in mind that with COVID, that these policies are very different. These policies are just when we're at 100% back in school. Okay, because attendance is going to be very difficult during the hybrid model. So the only thing that was adjusted there, it says after 4 tardies, students will be suspended from an entire practice. And then after 7 tardies, students will be suspended from an entire contest. The reason we changed it was because it was very difficult, especially during wrestling, to hold a student accountable for half a meet or half a game. So it wasn't fair to all the other sports where you could sit somebody out for half of a game. So we switched that to instead of a half of a game to an entire practice.
It seemed fair to me, Mr. Diaz.
And then we did add parent notes will not be accepted for tardies following trips contests. We would need doctor's excuses. The reason for that was we were getting a lot of athletes that would come in after a game, probably second or third period, because they knew they had to be here at least 4 periods, or they had to be here the next day. And they were just coming in with a parent note, and this was becoming habitual. So we decided that it would be necessary to state that in there so that parents and student athletes were not taking advantage of that.
Anything else, Mr. Diaz?
I think as far as the athletic handbook, that's all for the athletic handbook.
I have a question.
Yes.
What do we do about any use of performance enhancing drugs, steroids?
We would consider it a controlled substance. So it would fall under that. I don't think it's listed in here, but that's something that we can certainly add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I read through that. There's a lot of language in there about marijuana and vape and, you know, a lot of stuff related to that, but nothing to performance enhancing stuff. And, you know, how do we go about if somebody has a suspicion that a kid's doing that, how do you go about raising that awareness and getting a kid tested? I mean, how does that look? How does that work? What's our policy on that?
You know, at this time, you know, that's a good question. I think at this time we haven't we haven't had to deal with that, at least in my time. I don't know if Mr. Avalos has in his time as the athletic director. But that is something that we do need to really strongly look at. And I think we could come back and have some policies made based on that. So we'll do some research and then come back with some information.
Okay, thank you.
And I think along those same lines, I don't know how legal would be. Maybe Mr. Gomez can answer this, but on maybe random drug testing.
As is this question for Mr. Gomez?
Yeah.
Well,
in
I
response
don't know
to
who can
that,
answer it.
I think that's going to be more a recommendation or getting consultant from our attorneys and seeing if it's actually a violation of the Fourth Amendment on how, if it's a policy and not a law. So I would say that if we're going to come up with some type of policy like that, that it's definitely reviewed by our legal to get their opinion on it.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you, Mr. Diaz. Thank you,
You're
Sandra.
welcome.
Mr. President,
Mr.
members of
Mendoza?
the board, yeah, the administration, having heard the questions and the recommendations, in lieu of Nelson Sports, doesn't start till October now, correct?
Yes, our first game is October 10th for volleyball. Might be a little sooner for cross country, but October 10th would be our first game for volleyball.
So that means practice is the first part of October, correct?
Practice will begin September 28th. At this point, we're in a dead zone until September 28th. No athletics whatsoever.
Okay, therefore, the administration recommends that we table action on this handbook, so to provide our AD to go back and administer the recommended, recommendations, additions to the handbook, and that, Nelson, that this be brought back. Is 2 weeks enough time for you to do it?
Yes, sir. I think that would be enough time.
Well, if the board approves, the administration recommends that we table the athletic handbook until the revisions are entered and brought back for another vote, to be looked at and reviewed again. That's our recommendation, Mr. President, members of the board.
You heard the recommendation. Do I hear motion?
I'll move.
Motion by Mr. Guadiana, second.
Gomez, second.
Second by Mr. Gomez. Any other comment?
Is that enough time to consult our lawyers on the use of steroids?
On the
I
testing.
can call as early as tomorrow, Mr. Holguin, and then get their opinion on it, okay?
Okay, great.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Up for the vote. Mr. Holguin,
Yes.
Mr. Guadiana,
Yes.
myself, yes. Mr. Gomez,
Yes.
Cordova. Mr. Cordova,
Yes. That little,
motion carries. Moves us on to item B.
Yes, the administration is presenting to you the 2021 Coaches Handbook. And again, Mr. Diaz, will you take the lead?
Yes, sir. So only minor adjustments were made to match the athletic handbook, which we've gone over, and that was the tardy policy. They also, we've included the NMAA approved physical. So the NMAA has a physical form that they want to use as a universal form, and also a liability release form that they've introduced last year as well. Those two things have been included, and that's on page 4. And number 22, page 4. Those are the only adjustments on that page. On page 8, we under school attendance, we've added the parents' notes will not be permitted as an excuse for not being in school 4 periods of the day. That's kind of to add to match the athletic handbook. So that was the only revision there. And then on number 5 above that, on the cumulative provision, it included the 11th. We reduced that to 12th grade only. Any questions on any of those changes or additions? Okay, on the next page, page 9, it's just the additions were made to match the athletic handbook, and it's about the tardies. And I think that was all the changes. We did I did make a change to the coach's attire. We included that soft-soled shoes may be required on the main gym floor. That wasn't in there before, and that's just to make sure that our floor, our new gym floor, is taken care of. It also had Levi's were not permitted, but we see that that is one of those items that it was really hard to manage and maintain. So we said Levi's are permitted as long as they did not have holes or frays.
What page is that on, Mr. Diaz?
That is on page 15 on coach's attire.
Okay, thank you.
Do you want to include something there about use of cleats on our baseball and softball field and football field?
Yes, we should include something like that. So that's a good idea, Mr. Sepulveda. I will include that here. I'll make a note to include that. I'm not sure where I would include it, but I will make a note to include that. The adding field policies.
And I don't know, but maybe somewhere we need to include that on our players and also any visiting teams.
Yes, sir. So I do make it a point to let the visiting teams know that we do have turf field and there are restrictions on there. But I will make it part of the policy.
Thank you. Thank you.
There are no further changes that I have made to the coach's handbook. If there's no further questions, I'd leave it to Mr. Mendoza.
One question for you, Nelson.
Mr. Diaz.
Nelson, is there any?
Yes.
All the changes you're going to do in the athletic handbook, will it affect changes to the coach's handbook as far as you know right now?
No. I think we're only adding and moving things to an appendix. For right now, they shouldn't be adding. The only thing that may be added to both policies are going to be how we handle the field and the field policies. So cleats and that and things of that nature will be added to both of them so they can both reflect the same thing.
Okay.
Hey, Nelson, there was another question.
Yes.
They were asking,
Yes.
why are they reducing the cumulative provision for student athletes?
The cumulative, the NMA has set a minimum guideline, and we can choose to make it maximum. The reason why, the rationale behind changing it to only seniors was because of the amount of students that were using it, and not doing anything in classrooms. So we had a couple of 9 weeks where students did absolutely nothing and wanted to use a cumulative provision. And fortunately, they had the ability to use it for them, fortunately for them. So I felt like it was something that the students found out about and were able to abuse.
We also want to make sure that they'll be able to play their senior year. So if they use it their junior year, they'll be ineligible their senior year. And we won't be able to use it again because they only get one.
Just a quick comment on that, members of the board. Over the years, we've had that in there just to help out those students who maybe struggle. Obviously, it's a discretion of the school to say whether they're going to use that, their sophomore, junior, or senior year. And I know we're trying to toughen up the academic standards and for our high school students, but also just that's a provision that the NMA leaves to the discretion of the schools. I always play devil's advocate for the kids who maybe might be struggling, and we were able to get them to stay in school because of athletics. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Other comments?
Yes, Mr. Mendoza, this is Gabe. I got a question. So in the
Yes.
student athlete handbook, there's a couple of sections in there on, disciplinary actions, first offense, second offenses. I didn't read anything like that in our coaches handbook.
That is not the
different
discipline
handbook?
for students is not listed in the coaches handbook.
Right. So no, I'm talking about discipline for coaches when they violate some of those, responsibilities, guidance that we set forth in the policy. Is that something separate?
It isn't. It's not listed in there, but I think that's something that Mr. Mendoza would probably have to sit down and really talk about, because it does include, it's a personnel issue. So I would have to, get a little more guidance from Mr. Mendoza on that one. And then we can add it into that if that's necessary.
Thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Holguin. That does come up yearly. And I think, Nelson, we do need to address that with our principal, Montoya, and then also Maureen Peru on this whole thing. So with that in mind, with some corrections needing to be done, Mr. President and members of the board, I ask that we table also the coaches handbook so that we can work both of these and then come back with a cleaned up version in case we do find a need to add or correct to the coaches handbook. And at this time, the administration recommends that we table this coaches handbook and it be placed on the agenda at the next board meeting, which is, I think is going to be in August. What day is that, the 10th, Irene? Can you look at it?
Yes, it's a 10th.
Okay, so it'll be we'll bring these two, if the board approves, the tabling of the coaches, we'll bring both of them back on the 10th. The administration recommends for that, please.
You heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Holguin. Second?
Second, Frank.
Second by Mr. Cordova. Any other comments? Call for the vote. Mr. Holguin,
Yes.
Mr. Guadiana,
Yes.
myself, yes. Mr. Gomez,
Yes.
Mr. Cordova,
Yes.
motion passes. Moves us to item C.
Yes, sir. Item C is adjustments to the 2021 district calendar. And I'm going to ask Dr. Jose Carrillo to please come forward.
Mr. President, members of the board, based on the statutory requirements authorized by the legislature during the 2020 special session, which required districts to prioritize additional instructional time for all students in the school year 2021 to recover instructional time that was lost to students in the 2019-2020 school year due to the public health emergency. So in essence, what they are asking us to add 10 additional instructional days. And what we've done, we've looked at the calendar, and as you can see on the green dates, which are September 25th, October 9th, October 16th, October 23rd, and October 30th for the first semester, 5 days. And then second semester, January 15th and 29th, February 12th and 26th, and March 12th as the other 5 days. And because they are allowing districts to stack the instructional recovery time with extended learning time and K-5 plus, we can capitalize on the funding to be able to compensate teachers for those additional days. They also put a provision that would waive 10 days due to the cancellation of school during the fiscal year 2021. So what that means is that at the end, we still have to do 25 days of K-5 plus, but depending on the budget, if we don't have the necessary funds to pay teachers for those additional days, then we would ask for the waiver, and so that we wouldn't have to do an additional 10 days at the end of the day of the year. We would still continue with the 5, but because the unit value has not been finalized, we don't know, the amount of funding that we would get. However, it's going to be based on the average of the 80th and 120th day. So we'll have more information down the road. So those were the adjustments that were made. Questions, comments?
No questions, no comments.
This is Gabe. I have a question.
Yes, sir.
I guess is the intent of this to get the students up to an academic level of where they should be?
The intent is try to make up time that was lost due to the national emergency when we had to shut down, and the legislature wanted to be able to try to recover, and they came to an arbitrary number of 10 days and additional days, and those will be for all students 10 additional instructional days.
The flaw in that is that days that they missed were of a prior academic year, and those subjects are not going to be revisited, correct?
So the intent is to accelerate learning and give students more instructional time.
It's just difficult to see how that's going to be affected with the new curriculum and new coursework. Is that going to be, are the teachers going to get additional instruction other than what would be the normal class?
They would add 10 days of additional instructional time.
I understand that. It's more of the lesson plans, the guided instruction I don't see how that's going to change. You'll have more time to do it in, but I don't really,
Yeah,
I just fail to see how we're going to recover days for last school year when the students are not going to go back and pick up on anything they should have gotten more information on in the previous year.
So the intent is to continue to move forward and give the students more instructional time.
Okay.
so my concern is the same as Mr. Guadiana's. I don't see how it makes up, what they missed last year. We're not going to go back and teach the days that they missed or the time that they missed last year. We're moving forward with the next curriculum. So yeah, it seems odd to me, but if it's a mandate, it's a mandate.
It is, and again, the intent is that to provide the opportunity for students to have more instructional time, and it's based on accelerating the learning. There might be some students that are going to be okay, but for those students that need some acceleration or remediation, this is an opportunity to try to catch them up as well. The actual bill is on the legislator website. I have copies of the bill and I can send it to you if you would like. But like you said, Mr. Holguin, it is a statutory requirement, and we as a district abide by what we're asked to do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Carrillo.
Thank you.
Mendoza.
Yes, at this time, the administration asks that you approve the 2021 district calendar for the additional days as required by statute, and that you approve as presented.
You heard the recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
Frank Cordova, so moved.
Gomez, so moved.
Motion by Mr. Cordova, second by Mr. Gomez. Any other questions? Call for the vote. Mr. Holguin,
Yes.
Mr. Guadiana,
Yes.
myself, yes, and Mr. Gomez,
Yes.
Mr. Cordova,
Yes.
motion passes. Mr. Mendoza.
Yes, thank you, board members. So now we go to the superintendent's report. And if you notice, these items here that are coming up are no action is to be taken. And I want to do comment. I have provided you a copy of the letter that was sent to me by Lieutenant Governor Howie Morales addressing his concern about our mascots and our Chief Wahoo logo that's currently on the baseball field. What I am suggesting here, and it's only a suggestion, and of course the board can suggest other, is in lieu of receipt of this letter, we just received this letter, or I received it Friday of last week. It just took a long time to get to me. I, at this time, have been reading it and taking it to heart, listening to the administration and other people from the community that have called me and talked to me. But at this time, I'd like to recommend that you allow the superintendent to assign Nelson Diaz and Pat Avalos to go ahead and form whatever they feel is necessary, committee or a questionnaire to go out to the public and get as many people to participate, and we can get a clearer picture of how the community feels in addressing the Chief Wahoo logo that's currently on our baseball field. And you'll see it, I think there's one, if I'm not mistaken, on the girls softball field. So we really need to look at this and not move too quickly without as much information as we can get. And so I'm asking that you allow me to do this, and also to take in item B, Snell Middle School's mascot that is called our Redskins. And this is, I'm on my 8th year as superintendent, and this is the second time it has surfaced. And I think it's time that we seriously look at it. We're either going to do it or we're not. So again, Nelson Diaz and Pat Avalos have asked, and if they want to bring in other administrators to help, and then we will bring more information, concrete information in the surveys that are driven by Nelson and Pat and brought to us for the next board meeting, so that we either make a decision with some information. And I'm open to comment from the rest of the board members on what I've just mentioned on A and B.
You heard Mr. Mendoza, any comments?
Mr. Mendoza, I saw Frank Gomez.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Frank.
So first of all, I think it's a great idea of getting all our parents, our staff members, and everyone involved and seeing where we want to go with this direction. I just want to make a comment that I think it's unfortunate. I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're trying to figure out how our kids are going to either virtually or go back on a hybrid to school. I mean, Dr. Carrillo and his team are trying to come up with every avenue to make it as safe as possible, as well as Mr. Peru with their transportation, and yet they throw a curveball to say and changing names. I believe this is an important topic that we need to figure out, but I don't believe it should have been done now when we're just trying to get our students and our staff to the best and safe avenues to go to school.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Well said. Anybody else, please?
Yeah, I'd like to comment, and I'm in disagreement with Mr. Gomez. I think these the times are upon us where such changes should be made, and an enlightened period that we're in. This shouldn't be so hard. I mean, taking a cartoon caricature and saying that's offensive, that's not a hard thing to come to a conclusion. And it's been brought up even back when I was on the board the first time in the 1980s. The other part is the term redskin certainly is derogatory. I really don't know if we need to do that extensive of outreach to come to that conclusion. And if we do come to a different conclusion, that would just by a matter of consensus, would that make that these symbols or labels any less derogatory? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think, I don't know if the board needs to go through that level of discussion. Certainly, I agree that there are very important things to be done. I think it's probably a good idea not to belabor it to such a point that we have to come up with a consensus in terms of public input. There's already a petition that's gone around. I'd like to see the petition, and I'd like to get any information that you've received to consider it. But to take administrators' time away from the very important things, I completely agree. That's probably a misuse of our time, and it's taking a priority, a focus away from a very important priority, and I agree with that completely. But I think that this is something the board has already been exposed to, just even just being a member of Cobre. And it's obvious if you look at the caricature, it's derogatory. I don't know. I agree with Frank that we shouldn't be taking away from the very important measures, but I disagree with him in terms of it's not an appropriate time to deal with it. It shouldn't take that long. It should be something that we've evolved to, that we can decide now. So that's my opinion.
This is Gabe.
Other comments?
Yeah, this is Gabe, Mr. Sepulveda. So I I would tend to agree with Mr. Guadiana. You know, I think there's it's sort of a couple of things here. You know, we can go out and outreach and see how the community feels, and understanding how they feel in my mind is different than what's right and what's wrong. So I would tend to agree with Mr. Guadiana. You know, I think it's obvious, you know, what we're talking about here. And in light of the social unrest right now in our nation, you know, I think that it is timely to talk about it and to come to some resolution on it. So, you know, obviously change is hard for people, and, you know, people hang on to things and, you know, for a long time and don't want to see change. So I think that's going to be the case. I think that's going to be pretty obvious when you do the outreach. But still, I don't think that's the question at hand. I think the question at hand is what's right and what's wrong.
If I may address the board, obviously we are in some troubling times. This has been brewing. I have to say also, I'm a Washington Redskin fan, so I'm dealing with it on two levels here. But the fact of the matter is, to me, I see, of course, the chief symbolism is being questioned very heavily, and really not as much on the Redskin side. I figure it probably would be the other way around, you know, the symbol in regards to the Redskins. But another consideration, you know, we are having to take away some of our time from getting ready. And, you know, we haven't had kids in the classroom since March. And now we're going to have to, you know, spend a little time. And of course, most importantly, we're going to have to spend some finances in order to change uniforms and things of that nature. And that also has to be considered, you know, just obviously over here, I can think, for example, we have a number of older uniforms that are still in use that have Redskins all the way across, you know, all the way across the front and back. So it's also going to take give us a financial hit at a time when we're scrapping for resources just to get protective gear into our schools and to see whether or not we're going to have enough. And you know, it's not going to be that great of a financial burden to do all of that, but it's still going to we're still going to take a hit on that. You know, obviously there was a big survey that was taken. What I understand, it's approaching 1,000 participants. That I think that's some good data right there. But, you know, you can also consider like what's going on in Las Cruces with the Oñate situation, where the majority of the people were in favor of keeping the Oñate symbolism there. Of course, that also has its issues in the Native American community. But, you know, I think obviously Nelson and I are up for whatever we need to do, as you say, for the right and take care and need to change this if we do. Those are some concerns that I have with that.
Thank you,
Mr. Sepulveda, I got some comments. Frank Cordova here. I agree with what Mr. Gomez has said, and I think that we shouldn't prioritize this thing over putting our students back into the classroom. But I also feel the fact that we have had several different instances on our board that we haven't contacted the community like we should have. And I think this is an opportunity because we do have clientele, which is teachers that have retired. We have members of the community that have been here for a long time, and they would like to speak. Not to say that that's the way that it's going to be, but they want to put their 2 cents into it. I don't think that we should have our AD and our principal spend a lot of time on it. I think the priority is with our students in the classroom. Thank you.
Just to speak a little bit on that, I think we could probably get something out really quickly as far as like a survey is concerned. That wouldn't take us very long. I'm sure there's other ways we can reach out to the public, but It's pretty, I think it's pretty simple, a pretty simple survey. The only thing is we would just need a little more information as to possible mascot replacements or things like that, that we would want for either like to replace the Redskin. And I think maybe that may not go out to the community, but we decide as a school board what it is, what options we would like to give the community. I don't know how you feel about that, Pat, but I think those decisions there would make our job a little bit easier when presenting the information.
The only comment that I have is, I know that right now, there's as far as I could see, there's 3 Wahoo Indians that are there. And 1 word out in the public that says Redskins, and that's underneath the marquee. White letters on a black background. And that's all the things that I see. The other thing is, right now, we got this letter from Howie that says that it is kind of offensive, and we have gotten some comments that it is offensive, and we've gotten some comments of people that want to keep it. The situation is going to be that I think we need to be a little bit more proactive on this thing, because right now it's coming from the state, but very soon it's going to come from the federal government, and we're not going to have a choice. So that is something that we need to take under consideration and advisement, that we need to talk more about of what we're going to do. And for right now, that's what I say, is that we need to talk more about it and see what we're going to do. Other comments?
I would agree with Toy, and perhaps the mode would be to put on the agenda for the next meeting to discuss a timeline for making a decision. If not, making the decision that, at the next board meeting, which would be my preference, but I understand if people want to have that discussion and then come to a conclusion.
Other comments? Mr. Mendoza?
Members of the board, I recommend that you allow me to continue with this. I will, unless there's an objection, I will bring it and I'll place it on the board's agenda in 2 weeks for possible board action on both A and B. And then at the same time, I'm asking Nelson and Pat, and we talked this during the day today about what I was going to recommend to the board. And you guys were very receptive to handling this for me. I know it's kind of pushing it, but with the use of our technology, I think you can get it done. You can get it. And we'd help you, Nelson, with whatever we can. So with that in mind, if it's not the objection of any board members, it'll be placed on the next board agenda so we can take some action, possible action on it.
I agree.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, with no other comments, I'd like to go to the C, Farmers to Families Food Box. And Alma, are you on, Grijalva? Are you online, and can you please comment on this? Can't hear
Yes,
you,
sir.
Alma.
Can you hear,
Okay, go
hear
ahead.
me?
Hello, Alma.
Yes, perfect.
Hello.
Okay, Alma, go ahead.
You can hear me. Hi. Okay, Mr. President, members of the board.
Hello.
Shamrock donated Shamrock donated 12 pallets of milk box.
You're muted, Alma. Somebody. Did we get to her?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah.
You're
Well,
muted
but you're
again.
mute again.
Okay, can you hear me now?
There you are, Alma. Just don't touch anything again.
Yes.
Just talk. Ándale.
Just continue.
Go ahead. Alma.
Just continue. Okay, Mr. President, members of the board. Shamrock donated 12 pallets of USDA milk boxes to the Cobre district last week so that we could distribute to the community. We did so on Friday, and we had a pretty good turnout. The boxes include a gallon of 2% milk, 24-ounce sour cream, a half and half, and 2 16-ounce cottage cheeses. We had some left over, so today we passed them out at the Bayard summer lunch site, and tomorrow we'll distribute the rest and we will distribute those on Friday. They were 12 pallets, so it's a total of 900 cases. So, and the community was real receptive to it. They really enjoyed it.
Board members, any questions for Alma?
I don't have any questions, but I just want to comment on thanking all the staff that have been involved with providing the meals and adding this to that as well. I'm very impressed with how hard they work, and they have it's a good community relations effort as well. I hope we can recognize the staff that are involved with this and reward them accordingly.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Mr. Guardiola. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Guadiana.
Well,
My
thank
pleasure.
Okay,
you,
Alma,
Alma,
thank
for
you very
your
much.
staff
and
for
good
doing
luck.
everything that you're doing.
Okay, Alma, thank you. And Mr. President, members of the board, that concludes the superintendent's report for tonight.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you, Alma, for everything you're doing. This moves us to
Thank you.
public input.
Appreciate
At
it.
this time we'll entertain it. You're welcome. This time we'll entertain it. Anything from the public? And Mr. Arambula, was there any comments?
Yes, sir. There's a couple on there, and then they're talking about they're wanting to know how the district is planning on handling sick leave if a staff member becomes ill, and if they're required to quarantine for 14 days. Another one asked if we are going to see the results of the staff surveys that were requested last week.
That can be answered real quickly. Everything that you've asked, those two questions, will be explained to the teachers at their orientation when they come back on Wednesday. They will be, their principals will be holding virtual meetings within their buildings. And they are going to be answering that question. So that'll be taken care of there. Okay?
Okay.
Is there any prohibition to answering that question now if the answer exists?
Okay, Victor, what was the first question, please? And I'll answer it.
Okay, the first question is, they're wanting to know how the district is planning on handling sick leave if a staff member becomes ill, and if they're required to quarantine for 14 days.
We have CDC requirements that we must follow. And yes, they will be allowed to use their sick leave. And if possible, if needed longer, they're fall under the FMLA Leave Act. And I don't know, yeah, it's governor's orders that all employees as they come on will be granted 10 additional leave days for this during this COVID-19 pandemic, if needed, okay? And employees are reminded, we're going to remind them at their meeting that we still have the school sick leave bank that they can apply in case they've run out of sick leave, and our employees have been very gracious at helping one another. What was your second question?
Okay, and then the second question was, when are we going to get the results of the teacher surveys? And then another one is staff members that reside out of town, if they're quarantining when returning back to district.
That's in two part, because it just depends what it is, and it'll be just depends what it is with their leave, because some of them have to go out because of family emergencies. But if it's vacation, let's say what worries me is that it's coming up with our Labor Day weekend. If they choose to go out, they need to declare it when they come back, and yes, they have to self-quarantine. And that's under our CDC guidelines, and the governor has been very adamant about that, as well as our Secretary of Education that we have, okay? So, and of course, it'll be charged again to their sick leave and everything else having to quarantine. Anything else, Victor?
That is all as of now. Oh, wait.
What was the question?
Thank you.
Are we also required to test on Wednesday, but we are not given the results immediately? Is it safe to enter the buildings?
Okay, that's a darn good question, because we were in contact with our health department here in Grant County, and at the advice of the CDC and the state of New Mexico health departments, because of the shortage of testing, I'm going to go material or PPE testing equipment, they have canceled hours unless we have anybody that shows up Wednesday and their temperature is over 100.3 or 100.4, then we're going to ask that they recommend and proceed with an individual testing. Otherwise, if we check your temperature and you're okay, I mean, we continue with the day, but we're going to have daily testing of all employees as they come on board to work in the buildings. Thank you, Victor.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mendoza, there was also the question about whether teachers will see the results of the surveys.
Well, that's at the principal meeting. Yes, sir. That's part of it, and that was discussed today. They will be, the survey will be shared with them.
And then I just got a phone call. Like I said, my line's forwarded from the district, but the person wouldn't disclose their name, but they're just mentioning administrators that travel outside the state or reside outside the state are not quarantining when returning. They're just going back to work.
That has been addressed by the secretary, because it affects all our eastern and western school districts, because we do have administrators that live in Texas or in Arizona, depending where you're at. And they found so long as they get tested, their temperature is done every day. Okay?
Okay.
That especially hits, for example, Gaston School District and Las Cruces School District. Gaston's half of 3/4 of their staff lives in El Paso. So that's what they're trying to address there.
So there's no quarantine requirement?
No, sir. Now, yes, if you go further than the limits that have been set, let's say I go out and want to go to Dallas or go to Tucson, I have to come back and self-quarantine. Yes, if it goes that way. Only if it's not for an emergency basis, then we have to test. I mean, we just get their temperature.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if you have this one or not, Victor, but there
I
is
can't
a
hear.
comment on the YouTube one, about a community member, an alumni member that did contact the
Other question?
and ran a survey.
I hear somebody talking in the background. That's all I hear.
It's Maureen, I'm sorry.
Maureen, we can't hear you.
I forgot I had my camera off. I'm sorry, but there was one more comment on the YouTube channel chat from an alumni that had, I guess, surveyed the community members and had passed that information on and just wanted to make sure that everyone had received it. And this is regarding the logo and the name change for the Redskins. So he just had mentioned that he wanted to make sure that you all knew that he had kind of surveyed the community as well. So if we can get that information to Nelson and Pat as they're looking into that.
I've been receiving emails that like it's just going wild this afternoon, and I will make sure that Pat and Nelson, I forward all that to them, okay? And I know that I'm copied, so is Jose Carrillo, and so is Mr. George Peru, so I know we'll make sure that everything goes to them.
Okay, no problem. I just wanted to mention that comment had been made on the chat.
Okay, thank you. Guess we can move forward. Mr. Items for the next agenda, please.
Mr. Mendoza.
Yes.
Yeah, just one more thing on public comment before, and I don't know if it fits here or just for the updates or unfinished business for items for the next agenda. Years back, under Dane Cannon's time that he was superintendent, that was during the time. I'm not sure if you can get our board secretary Irene to look up and maybe bring up some information. But my recollection was when Dane Cannon was the superintendent, there was several people that did come in support of us changing the stadium to Javi Morales. My recollection, that was never approved by the board, and it was done by Dane Cannon himself. Would Irene be able to find the minutes? And
Irene, you're on board. Can you comment on that, please? You just went sideways, Irene. Hope you don't fall on us.
You went upside down.
Irene, you're making me dizzy now.
You're mute, Irene. You're on mute, Irene.
Mr. Gomez, to answer your question, yes, we can do that because she's
Yes, yes.
Yes, you
Yes,
can,
I can
Irene?
do that. I can look up the information. Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. Do you hear that, Mr. Gomez?
yes, sir. Thank you, Irene.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Okay,
Items for the next agenda.
I have two things, the tabling of the athletic activity handbook, policy handbook, and the coaches handbook. Other things.
The superintendents will bring Lieutenant Governor's Highway request letter to be addressed, and then also Snell Middle School mascot will also be placed on action items for the next board meeting.
Update of opening the school.
Yes, let's go ahead and put that again. Just no action on that, but just a report, and also student transportation, Irene.
And I would still like to ask for the superintendent's evaluation.
at this time, due to the virus, we're gonna have to wait until we get going and see how things are going with the school. I know Mr. Mendoza is gonna have us kind of an update letter from stuff that has been going on. But as far as his evaluation, we're gonna have to wait and until we get rolling on school and see how things are going.
My understanding was that the reason we haven't done it is because we can't facilitate assurance that the closed session is actually closed. Has that changed now to now more of an operational issue?
No, that has not.
So why can't we have a closed session? For instance, if we were to hold a meeting at the Cobre Auditorium, have that a closed session where we ask people to exit the auditorium and we conduct a closed session meeting there.
Okay, at this time.
That's one
There's
example.
there's too many doors in the auditorium where people can come in and out. That's one thing. The other thing is, right now, we need to concentrate on how we're going to get kids to school safely. How we work with these the viral schooling and that stuff right now. Those are some of the things that we need to work on. And as far as his evaluation, that is still an ongoing thing. But as far as right now, until that happens, we're going to have to kind of postpone that.
Just my comment for the record is that the timelines were set for things that were supposed to have been done before the end of the school year last year.
But how much time did we spend? How much time did we spend in school from March until now?
There were certain things that could have been done certainly within that time frame, and were not prohibited from happening given the access to online surveys, access to online discussions. There was nothing prohibiting those objectives from being met.
Well, that's the only thing that we're going to have to wait until things going, because I know that he was working hard on some of the stuff that we had to do to go viral then, and that is something that we're having to do right now to go viral now. Virtual, whatever.
Yeah, it's virtual, that viral, but minor details.
My fault. You're correct. Other comments? Okay, motion to adjourn.
So move, Frank Cordova.
We adjourn. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Irene.
Everybody have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.